Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thanks so much for tuning in here on a victorious Week 1 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars have taken down their division rivals, the Colts, in Indianapolis by a final score of 31-21. It was not always pretty in this one for the Jaguars. Took a little bit too long for them to get a comfortable lead in this one. In my opinion, some weird, fluky, odd situations that took place in this game with the Jaguars with some of their turnovers and miscues. But the Jaguars were able to get a 10-point victory in Week 1 and establish a one-game lead in the AFC South, the only victorious team in the AFC South today. You saw the Titans, Texans, and obviously the Indianapolis Colts lost in Week 1. So your Jaguars, they are atop the division at 1-0, an early lead in the division. We're going to get into my top takeaways from this one here. Not going to be a super deep dive. We will get into that throughout the week, but we will get into the top takeaways, both positive and negative, for the Jaguars. And this one, really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss a show on here. If you want to support the channel further, you can check out genjag.com/shop. Pick up some new Duval gear. Really appreciate y'all. So let's start with the positives and then we'll get to the negatives. A lot more positives overall, in my opinion, than negatives. There will be some stuff to get into on the negative side, though, for sure. I think some of the issues the Jaguars had were pretty fluky. I think the final score of 31-21 doesn't really indicate how much better the Jaguars were than the Colts today. But looking at these positives, Calvin Ridley, what a debut for Agent Zero for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was so special today, especially when they needed him early on in this one. He was able to rack up 8 catches on 11 targets for over 100 yards, 103 yards on the day, 101 yards on the day for Calvin Ridley, and a touchdown long of 29 yards. He was everywhere, especially early for these Jaguars to get the ball rolling, get some points on the board. And I think that he just was exactly what you wanted to see from him, right? He looked this way throughout training camp, throughout the preseason. Now you get your first real game action, and Calvin Ridley goes out there, 8 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown. He was excellent for the Jaguars the entire day. And yes, he did have the fumble, did not end up costing the Jaguars, of course, but Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence, that connection, you can really see it starting to blossom right in front of your eyes right now. This was the very beginning of the Trevor Lawrence to Calvin Ridley connection, and I think it's going to be a long and prosperous connection in Jacksonville for the Jaguars with Trevor and Calvin, no doubt about it in my mind. Josh Allen, he was unbelievable today for the Jaguars defense. Had a sack on third down early, ended up with 3 sacks in the game, his career high, another tackle for loss. He was playing with great energy, which is par for the course with Josh Allen. He's always flying around on the football field, but 3 sacks for him in a game. Absolutely awesome performance for Josh Allen on the defensive side of the ball. Switching back to the offensive side of the ball, unbelievable touchdown grab by Zay Jones in this one. I thought he was money for the Jaguars offense for the most part. You know, looking at Zay Jones, 5 catches on 7 targets for 55 yards and that touchdown. Really good stuff for Zay. He's a guy that doesn't get talked about as much anymore because you got Calvin Ridley, obviously Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, all these guys. But Zay Jones, he is still a critical piece to the Jaguars offense, and he can get the job done for them. Foye Oluokun getting back on the defensive side of the ball, a forced fumble, and you had Angelo Blackson able to recover that one. Foye also ended up with a pass breakup in the end zone later in the game. Big play there. And of course, he led the team with tackles with 12. Off to a hot start for Foye Oluokun, a guy who, you know, is he going to be able to, for the 3rd straight season, lead the entire NFL in tackles? If Week 1 is any indication, I think that there's a very good chance Foye Oluokun could be on track for another huge tackle season and perhaps able to lead the league once again. Tyson Campbell, I called this one an interception for Tyson Campbell in this one. He was able to pick off an Anthony Richardson pass, also had a strip on a 4th down run stuff, which was awesome to see. Tyson Campbell, he had a great start to his 3rd season in the league, a player that is widely viewed by a lot of the top minds in the NFL as a really, really strong young corner. I think that he is going to just continue to establish himself as one of the best young corners in the league. You saw that today. Tank Bigsby had some really unfortunate mistakes early on, right? You had the dropped pass that led to an interception. Wasn't the best pass, but hit him in his hands. He definitely should have been able to haul that one in. And then you also saw him recover the Trevor Lawrence fumble and then just kind of stand there with the football, not knowing what to do. The entire Jaguars offense kind of didn't know what to do. The Colts, they kept playing because the whistle did not blow. The Colts ended up getting a touchdown. But after that happens, obvious couple mistakes for Tank Bigsby in his first game with the Jaguars, but he was able to get his redemption, a couple really strong red zone runs, and a touchdown for Tank Bigsby in his debut for the Jaguars. ETN also found the end zone as well. But good stuff for Tank Bigsby being able to rebound from the mistakes he made earlier in the game, and I think that he's going to have a really strong career. I think perhaps the biggest play of the game was the Jamal Agnew punt return, where it looked like he was just going to let it bounce, but then it kind of bounced right to him. He's like, all right, I'll take it. And he took it indeed. He ran real far with that football, was almost able to score a touchdown for the Jaguars on the punt return. But what he did do was put them in position to score points. That was huge for the Jaguars at that point in the game. So I think you look at Jamal Agnew and that punt return. He's a guy that I talked about this week. Entering 2022, he was coming off a big injury. In 2023, he's had a full offseason of health, just been able to practice and hone his craft. I think you're going to see the Jamal Agnew that you saw more of in 2021 than the guy who was recovering from injury a little bit to start the 2022 season. So great stuff from Jamal Agnew, obviously. Looking at the negatives, I don't have a ton right now. I do think that there was a little bit too much pressure potentially allowed by the Jaguars offensive line. And talking about that offensive line, Brandon Sheriff, he was injured with an ankle injury, came back in the game, and then left the game again. So we're going to have to see where he's at with his health. Brandon Sheriff is a player the Jaguars need on their offensive line. He's a team captain. He's one of the most talented players on the team. So you're hoping that he's not going to be out for an extended period of time. But Brandon Sheriff, that's been kind of the knock on him throughout his career. He misses a lot of games due to injury. You're hoping he's not going to miss too much with this one, but we'll just have to wait and see. And then finally, Press Taylor. This was his first full game as Jaguars offensive coordinator and full-time play caller. Doug Peterson told NFL.com earlier this week that this would be Press Taylor's opportunity this year to be the full-time play caller for the Jaguars. In my opinion, there was plenty of good stuff from Press Taylor in this offense, but on third down and fourth down, I think they were just a little bit too cute at times. I don't think that they had some of the right things dialed up on some of those plays for the third and fourth down attempts, especially the short ones. They were 3 of 12 on third down, 1 of 3 on fourth down. Was not a positive outing in that regard at all when you talk about the third down and fourth down efficiency, in my opinion. You want to see that improve greatly, and I think a lot of it did have to do with the play calling, just not really being super smart in some of these situations with the play calls and designs. So I think you got to go back to the drawing board a little bit there for Press Taylor in his debut as the Jaguars full-time play caller. But overall, I think this is a win you can feel good about. It's the NFL, right? They're not always going to be easy. There's going to be crazy things that happen. All intents and purposes, this is really a 31-14 game if you don't have that fluky touchdown by the Colts defense off the Tank Bigsby and Trevor Lawrence fumbles. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. I'd be excited if you're a Jaguars fan out there. Going into week 2, the Jags, they were able to have, in my opinion, what was a fairly convincing win over Indy. I know it didn't really get established that the Jaguars were clearly going to win this game until later than you would like. But again, I think there was a little bit of flukiness. It's week 1. Don't worry about it. You are 1-0. You're the only team in the division that is 1-0. There are some things to clean up, no doubt about it. And again, you have a huge matchup with the Chiefs in week 2. But you're 1-0 in the division. The rest of the division is 0-1. You are atop the division after 1 week. I'd be pretty excited about it if I was a Jaguars fan, and I am. So good stuff. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. We will get into this matchup deeper, dive into the offense and the defense, players that stood out negatively and positively on both sides of the ball and on special teams. I really appreciate y'all. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You can also check out jinjag.com/shop and pick up some new Duval gear. Have a good one, Duval.